So good morning, everybody. This is the first of ICAEW Midlands Bitesize Business programme. We're really pleased to bring this programme to our ICAEW members. It's very much a different programme. We realised that many of our sessions were not explicitly for our business members. Business members are the majority of our members. We wanted to be able to bring you a programme that is covering what you wish to cover. I also want to say that we're not just covering the Midlands here. There is at least one person international I spotted on the list, and we've got quite a few people from outside the Midlands in the UK. So it's great to see those people all here. You're extremely welcome. So today's session is on remote working. So you may want to call that hybrid working, blended working, whatever language you use in your own organisation. We've called it remote working just for simplicity. We have Michelle Briggs. Michelle Briggs is an ICAEW chartered accountant. She's very much transformed her career, and she's now a person-centred counsellor. She runs Counselling West Bridgford, and she's here to talk to you particularly about loneliness and the importance of connection.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Sophie and the ICAEW, for inviting me here this morning. It's a real privilege. Back in 2017, so way before COVID was a thing, Dr. Vivek Murthy, who is the former Surgeon General in the US for Barack Obama, published in the Harvard Business Review an article about the problem of loneliness in the workplace. And from the poll that we've just seen, but also with the research done during COVID, that certainly hasn't improved. And the ONS actually did some research on its general loneliness, that they have actually are seeing increased reported self-reporting of loneliness. We're talking about remote working and today, and I thought it might be helpful for you, particularly with teams, to actually, and for yourselves, to consider the idea of loneliness and connection, starting with a definition of what it is, how it might manifest, how it might come across to someone who's feeling lonely, then actually to look at it a bit more closely in something called the dimensions of connection or loneliness, and I've then mapped that into the workplace. Just to finish off with, I've got 4 or 5 sort of tactical things you might consider doing to start to improve the connection within your teams going forward. So let me just get started. So really this is a very simple definition. Loneliness is the gap between the connections we need and the connections we experience. That's really easy to say, but of course that's very individual. The amount of connection an individual needs depends on who you are, and there's nothing better or worse. If you need more connection, that doesn't make you any worse than someone who needs less. It's just as it is. I think sometimes when we think of loneliness, there is a stereotype of, this sad, empty, depressed feeling. But what I've got just coming on the screen are some aspects of loneliness that perhaps aren't necessarily typical and thought of that. And so I'm really noticing people being sort of more irritable. I just certainly note it in myself. And the reports of the increased sales of alcohol, and the one I put there last is the overworking and the number of people that are perhaps working even harder than they were before. And that's a hard one because we often celebrate that. So we sort of might know what it looks like, but something wanted to just pause here with a moment of why do we care? And we often talk about engagement in organisations, which actually leads to improved productivity and then creativity and retention. And actually, there's actually something before engagement, and it's this idea of connection. And what I wanted to introduce to you is this concept of dimensions of connection. And when I discovered this, it was really helpful in understanding myself and actually how they impact others. So the intimate connection is your best friend, often your intimate partner. Relational is the circle of friends. It's quite a large group of people, but it's it's those that you would go out for birthday celebrations and actually you might pick up the phone to from time to time. The collective, that's this idea of feeling part of something bigger than ourselves. It can actually be as simple as supporting your local football team, but work can actually come into this. Feeling part of a bigger organisation can actually help that collective dimension. And the idea of self, the final one I'm introducing to you here, and that's that the the self-awareness, the knowing of ourselves, it can be as simple as knowing how to occupy our time, or maybe how to direct ourselves in our work. And what I've actually done here, and I'm interested in any feedback you may have later and any thoughts on this, is I've mapped those across into the workplace, both as just an employee in work and also how you may feel as a leader. I won't go through every box because I'll get this pack to you at the end, because I'm really keen that I'm really looking forward to our discussion later. But I know for a leader, I was finance director, group finance director for an organisation, and having that someone to run confidential ideas openly and constructively, actually to know that if it's actually something a bit bonkers, that's okay, we can have that and done that in a trusted way. I think that can be, yeah, that's actually really important to be able to do our jobs. And I'm wondering, and probably whether now with a lot of these things that we hear, for example, the relational aspect of actually having personal connections with peers, that's actually harder when we're not actually seeing each other day to day in the office. And a lot of these things about connection and about loneliness tend to be, they're instinctive. We learn how, as human beings, one of our fundamental one of the few instincts we have as human beings is to seek connection, and so we actually learn how to do it instinctively. And when our natural strategies are taken away from us, I think then it becomes a bit harder. And I'm wondering if for work people are missing some of that and not even realizing the gossip at the tea station, for example. So hopefully you'll be able to reflect on that a little bit later. And one last thing is, I call them evolutionary headwinds, in that, as I've just said, we are designed evolutionarily to seek connection, and that's what we need to thrive. And we have this celebrating independence, which is counter to actually our natural way. And this final one is this cruel twist of evolution, that the more lonely we feel, the more we isolate ourselves. And it makes no logical sense that if you're feeling lonely, what you're going to do is not see anybody. And I'm wondering if, again, if you've got teams, and I notice you think, oh, mental health of my team's suffering a bit. If they're struggling, they may not tell you. They may say, no, I'm fine. I don't need a one-to-one. I'm getting on okay. Whether actually that's just actually a sign that they're perhaps not doing quite so well. So what can we do? And it's three things. It's, yes, promoting connection, understanding maybe a bit, what drives loneliness, and understanding the individuals too. So there's probably a few ways of looking at understanding. And the last one is structure. I don't know if that seems an odd one or not, but I know from my accountancy training, the forced fun, let's all go get drunk and know each other was the method of promoting connection. But that, those of you that hated that, actually, or those of us that hated that, actually know that that only suits a particular type of personality. And what I've just got, I have pulled out these 5 things that, the first one is a new one that I picked up recently that are super, but other things that have actually, I've used over time and helpful. Again, you'll have the pack. I will briefly run through them, but we'll try not to dwell on them so much, so I can hand over to Julian. So this inside scoop, this is a way of bringing people as a human being, not just as an employee, into the space, encouraging and inviting them to share something about themselves as part of a regular huddle. It's that balance between saying, hey, we want everyone to do this, versus it being an invitation, so there doesn't feel that pressure. I really recommend looking at Vivek Murthy's work on all of this if you'd like to learn more. And if you Google him at the Harvard Business Review, you'll get several of his articles. And I picked this up from him. And it was a real powerful piece that he wrote on this. He also talked about asking teams who's their best friend at work, which I haven't tried, but I think it's going to be interesting. I saw on there's at least one person I know from Rolls-Royce here, so the 4-box chart will be well known to anyone, and that is where this comes from. And what this, again, is providing structure. It gives everyone a equal voice, I'll say, a similar voice. It also has this box of help, support needed. And one thing as humans that helps us feel more connected, one of them is acts of service, it's called. And if we are helping someone, it improves our connection and therefore decreases our loneliness. I worked at a hotel 2 years ago and had a team where I did an informal version of that. It took a good 3 or 4 months before it actually had any flow to it. So that's why the note just encouraging you to persevere, so that once our teams feel confident to share and be involved, then they will join in, but it may take some perseverance. Listening, we've probably all been on those courses about learning to listen. So I guess this just is a reminder, and sometimes we just want someone to hear and understand. We're not after advice. So I encourage you on that. Of course, I'm going to put coaching and counselling, or coaching and counselling in there, and working with an accredited professional it just allows us to use the phrase of explore our edges, and you know that you can actually going to be held psychologically safe, and this can be really powerful. And this last one, and this, I'm going to put an advert, Sophie, in for some of the ICAEW connected communities, and really encourage you. I was privileged to do a similar presentation to this one for the small practitioners group in the Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire, Lincolnshire group, and I feel they represent a connected community. It's coming together around a particular goal, but actually providing more than just a technical support. So it's not about just sharing business information, but actually about having other people to connect to. So that's it for my presentation. We do have a final poll that Sophie's going to run for us. And these here are just my connection. Please do connect on LinkedIn if you would like to. And the Red Cross, Dr. Mercy I mentioned, but also the BBC's done some loneliness on research, which is really interesting if you want to learn more.
Thank you, Michelle. That was fantastic. I've just launched the poll for you. So this is checking around disconnection and whether you would tell your leader, or if you think your teams would tell you as a leader. We'll share that shortly. Thank you for also plugging the connected communities there, Michelle. It's very kind of you. We will send some details of those out to you, members, in case you're not aware of what those are, but they're related to, there are business member connected communities that we're growing in the Midlands. There's 3 of those. There's 4 in small practice, 3 in small practice and 1 in practice in Leicestershire and Northamptonshire. And they're also in sectors as well. I think we have 5 in sectors in the Midlands, and then there are 28 nationally. So there's all kinds of different groups that you can get involved with. So I'm going to end that poll. Thank you very much to everybody who took part. And here are the results. And Michelle will reflect on these briefly for us.
Yeah, interesting. And actually it is great to actually see that over half of you would actually speak up and say something. And I just encourage the rest of you that, and as I said, it's that cruel twist of evolution, that if we're feeling disconnected, that we're more likely to isolate ourselves. It's finding ways that you can actually maybe reach out. I guess it depends who your boss is. I'm not going to pretend everyone is great at these kind of things. I really hope some of the stuff that I've talked about today has given some understanding and may help you improve some of those connections. I'm really looking forward to the conversation that we have later. People feel that they're able to share, that'll be great. But I'll hand back and I'll mute.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I think that that's been fantastic to look at the various angles of the individual and the teams. It's something that I was speaking to my team, Becky or Nod, speaking to my team about it yesterday. For me, it's if they want to speak to me, great, but please speak to each other was always my message yesterday to them all. Make sure you're speaking to somebody.